Imagine finding out, in the middle of a family trip, that everyone had a place to stay except you. That's exactly what happened to me. But what no one expected was how I'd react, and how it would change everything between us. My name is Emily, and I'm 26 years old. Every summer, my family takes our traditional trip to Martha's Vineyard, and I've always cherished the chance to reconnect with everyone. But this year felt different. There was a strange energy during our planning calls, something subtle, something I couldn't quite name. Still, I brushed it off. When I finally arrived at the luxury resort and heard the words the hotel clerk spoke to me, it felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. My world didn't just tilt, it collapsed. But before I get into what happened next, I want to know, where are you watching from? Tap that like button and subscribe because what I'm about to share isn't just a story about a missed hotel reservation. It's a story about how the people you love the most can betray you in ways you never see coming. The Walker family had been making our annual pilgrimage to Martha's Vineyard for as long as I could remember. These vacations weren't just getaways. They were family rituals, almost sacred in nature. Every July, we'd pack up our summer clothes, load up the car, and head to that picture-perfect island where generations of memories lived. My earliest memories of these trips feel like a dream. I remember being 7, building intricate sandcastles with my little sister Madison while our parents watched us from beach chairs, their laughter rising and falling with the sound of the waves. Dad would take us sailing with his friend, showing us how to read the wind and steer the boat. Mom, always prepared, would throw elaborate beach picnics, complete with her famous potato salad and lemonade that somehow tasted better with sand between your toes. Madison and I were inseparable on those trips. We'd hunt for seashells, draw treasure maps, and pretend we were pirates exploring unknown lands. Our parents, James and Catherine, seemed to light up in those moments. It was as if our joy made everything brighter. And if there was one person who kept it all running smoothly, it was Catherine. My mom had this uncanny, almost magical talent for planning. She coordinated flights, booked beautiful accommodations, and made itineraries so seamless that every trip felt effortless. Everyone in our extended family admired her for it, and she took great pride in that. This particular summer came at a critical moment in my life. I had just started a demanding new job as a marketing coordinator at a top Boston firm. My days were packed and my energy drained. On top of that, I was still raw from a messy breakup with my boyfriend of 2 years. I needed this trip. Desperately. I imagined healing walks on the beach with Madison, late-night heart-to-hearts, and the calming presence of people who loved me without conditions. Our family group chat had been buzzing with updates for weeks. Madison was excited about trying new restaurants. Dad was all about booking fishing trips. Mom, of course, was researching spas and art galleries. When I offered to help plan, they told me not to worry. "It's all taken care of, sweetheart," my mom texted. "Focus on your new job. Just show up and relax." It felt thoughtful, even loving. And honestly, I was grateful. Life had been a lot lately, and knowing my family had my back meant the world. In hindsight, though, there were signs. Little things that didn't quite add up. But I was too tired, too hopeful, to notice. As our departure day approached, my excitement grew. I shopped for new outfits that would photograph well for Instagram. Maybe a little shallow, but I needed to feel confident again. I picked out beach books, listed fun activities to surprise my family with, and even brought small, meaningful gifts for each of them. Madison and I hadn't been as close lately. Life got in the way, but I believed this trip could bring us back together. I missed her. I missed us. On the morning of the trip, I woke up early to sunshine pouring through my windows. For the first time in weeks, I felt light, hopeful. My bags were packed with care. The anticipation felt electric. Because of my work schedule, I had to drive separately. We agreed to meet at the resort. Honestly, I was looking forward to the peaceful 3-hour drive. Time to clear my head and prepare to reconnect. The ride was smooth. The weather was perfect. Everything felt like it was falling into place. I did try calling Mom and Dad a few times along the way to check in and coordinate our arrival, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I figured they were busy or in a dead zone. No big deal. As I pulled into the resort's grand circular driveway, I couldn't stop smiling. The grounds were gorgeous, flawless landscaping, elegant architecture, everything I'd imagined. I walked through the massive glass doors and immediately felt transported. Marble floors gleamed beneath my feet. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened up to a breathtaking harbor view. Soft classical music floated through the air. The entire place radiated peace and luxury. Approaching the reception desk, I felt a bubble of joy rising in my chest. I couldn't wait to see my family. The man behind the desk was impeccably dressed and offered me a warm, practiced smile. "Good evening. Welcome to Ocean View Resort. How can I help you today?" "Hi," I replied, unable to hide my excitement. "I'm checking in. Last name's Walker." He typed confidently for a moment, scanning his screen. But then something changed. His brows pulled together. "Let me try another spelling," he muttered, typing again. "Maybe under James or Catherine Walker?" I offered, still cheerful. But his concern deepened. "I'm checking everything," he said, apologetic now. "Is there a confirmation number you can share?" I froze. I didn't have one. My mom had said she took care of everything. "I don't," I said, my voice dipping. "My mom made the reservation. But this is our annual trip. I'm supposed to be here." He nodded and tried again. Spelled it a dozen different ways. Checked different dates. Called over a colleague. Guests behind me were getting impatient. My stomach tightened. The clerk's face was now gentle, but serious. "Miss Walker," he finally said, "I'm so sorry, but I can't find your name in the system at all." His words felt like a punch to the chest. I dropped the coffee mug I'd been holding. It shattered on the marble floor, the crash echoing through the lobby like a warning bell. Still, I clung to hope. It had to be a mistake. I grabbed my phone and checked the group chat. But something was wrong. Messages were missing. Entire threads about the trip had disappeared. I knew I'd seen them. Had they been deleted? Panic crept in. I called Mom. Voicemail. Dad. Voicemail. Madison. Nothing. The desk clerk asked gently, "Is it possible they booked a different hotel?" "No." "Impossible. We always stayed here. Always." My voice trembled. "Can you check if James, Catherine, or Madison Walker have checked in?" He typed, then looked up, sympathy all over his face. "Yes. They checked in an hour ago. They're staying in the presidential suite." And just like that, everything inside me cracked. They were already here. Already settled in. Already starting their vacation. Without me. I stood there, frozen in that elegant lobby, surrounded by shards of broken porcelain and the quiet sympathy of strangers. My suitcase sat beside me like a monument to misplaced trust. How could this be happening? Why hadn't anyone called? Why wasn't I on the reservation? More than confused, I felt a deep sense of betrayal beginning to bloom inside me, like a slow ache spreading through my chest. This couldn't be a mistake. Something was very wrong. Determined to understand what was going on, I handed my luggage to the front desk staff and set off to find my family. The hotel was vast and luxurious, with charming pathways connecting buildings, hidden courtyards, and elegant open-air lounges. The kind of place designed for dreamy vacations, not the unraveling of relationships. After wandering for nearly 20 minutes, peeking into restaurants and pool areas, I finally saw them. There they were. Mom, Dad, Madison, sitting poolside at a beautiful restaurant table, drinks in hand, sun reflecting off Madison's perfectly styled hair like it belonged in a travel brochure. They were laughing, relaxed, as if they'd been there for hours. My heart dropped. They didn't look like people searching for a missing family member. They looked settled, comfortable, at peace. And without me. Trying to stay calm, I walked over to them with a shaky smile, forcing cheer into my voice. "There you are," I called, trying to sound lighthearted. "I've been looking everywhere." They turned slowly. Dad glanced at me briefly before quickly averting his eyes, suddenly captivated by the horizon. Mom's hand moved automatically to her necklace, fidgeting nervously, something I'd only seen her do when she was uncomfortable or hiding something. Madison didn't hide. She looked straight at me, expressionless, cold, like she was staring at a stranger. "Oh," she said flatly, "you're here." The words stung. No hug, no smile. "No, we were worried about you. Just, you're here." Still clinging to hope, I kept my voice upbeat. "Of course I'm here. I've been trying to check in, but they don't have my name anywhere in the system." I told them to look under Walker, but I stopped, expecting anyone to jump in, to say, "That's weird, let's fix this," or "Let me talk to the front desk." But no one did. Silence. Mom fiddled with her necklace. Dad stared at his drink. Madison sipped from her glass, her face unreadable. "That's weird," Madison finally said, without an ounce of concern. "Maybe you booked a different hotel." Her tone wasn't helpful. It was smug, sarcastic. "Phew." I blinked. "No, I didn't book anything. You all said not to worry, remember? Mom told me it was handled." Still, no reaction. Just blank faces and a wall of silence. Trying not to panic, I continued, "Look, I know this has to be some kind of mix-up. Maybe we can just add me to your reservation, or I can get another room. We'll figure it out." Dad finally spoke, but he didn't look at me. "The hotel's fully booked. There's a big event in town." His tone was rehearsed, like he'd practiced that line. "But you all have a suite," I said slowly. "A suite for 4. There are 4 of us. Mom, Dad, Madison, me." Mom's voice was tight as she finally answered. "We only booked 1 suite. It's really just meant for 4 people." I stared at her. 4 people. I was the 4th. So, why wasn't I included? My voice trembled. "I don't understand. If there's room for 4, and we're 4, why isn't there space for me?" That question, the most obvious one, was met with a silence so deep it roared in my ears. Their eyes darted away from mine. They looked anywhere but at me. Then Madison leaned forward. "Emily," she said, using the tone you'd use with a child who just couldn't grasp something simple, "there have been some changes in the family dynamic lately. We just thought it would be better if this trip focused on people who really want to be together." It felt like a slap. Not just the words, but the casual way she said them. So matter-of-fact, so heartless. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. They had discussed this. Agreed on it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What are you talking about?" I asked, panic giving way to shock. "I do want to be here. I've been looking forward to this trip for months." "Have you?" Madison asked, tilting her head. "Because it seems like you've been too busy with your new job, or your breakup drama, or whatever else has been going on in your little world." Each word hit like a hammer. She wasn't finished. "You've made everything about you lately, every conversation, every gathering. It's always Emily's career, Emily's feelings, Emily's problems." I looked at my parents, searching their faces for outrage, for defense, for anything, but they sat there silently, allowing it, allowing her to speak for all of them. My voice cracked. "You're my family." Madison's reply was cold and final, and family means being honest. "Honestly, we thought the trip would be more peaceful without you." Her words didn't just hurt, they carved something out of me. This wasn't some heated outburst. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was premeditated. This was a carefully executed rejection. A betrayal planned behind closed doors by the very people I trusted most. Still clinging to the belief that this had to be a misunderstanding, I asked, "You planned this?" "All of you." No one denied it. Not even a weak attempt to pretend otherwise. Mom stayed silent, eyes locked on her drink. Dad looked like he wished he could vanish into thin air. Then Madison delivered the final blow. She stood, eyes scanning the restaurant like she was preparing for a stage performance. She raised her voice, just enough to be overheard by nearby diners. "I only made reservations for our real family," she said, loud and clear. The words echoed. Everything stopped. The clinking of silverware, the hum of quiet conversations, the splash of water from the nearby pool. All of it seemed to vanish in that moment. And I stood there, exposed and humiliated, the center of a scene I hadn't consented to be a part of. People turned. Strangers stared, some with curiosity, some with pity. My hands started shaking. I couldn't breathe properly. A wave of heat rose through my body, followed by a cold numbness. My chest was tight, my legs unsteady. I thought I might faint. Still, I managed to whisper, "What do you mean, real family?" Madison smirked. Her voice now carried that smug, self-righteous tone that only people completely convinced of their moral superiority can manage. I mean people who don't spend every family dinner turning the conversation into a therapy session about their latest meltdown. I blinked in disbelief. She wasn't done. People who actually ask how we're doing, who contribute something other than their problems, not someone who drains the energy out of every room they walk into. Each sentence sliced into me. These weren't just harsh words. They were years of resentment, bottled up and unleashed without mercy. She started listing examples. My recent job promotion, the way I talked about it at Christmas, my breakup, how tired they were of hearing about my relationship disasters. How, in her words, I bragged about my career while ignoring how it made others feel. I turned to my parents again, begging silently, "Say something, please." But they just sat there, letting her continue, letting her reduce me, piece by piece, in front of strangers. "Mom," I finally said, my voice breaking completely. "Dad, this isn't true. You know it's not true." Mom didn't even look at me. She took another sip of her drink, as if I weren't even there. Dad cleared his throat. "Lately, it's just felt like everything's been about you, Emily." His words felt like a verdict. Cold. Final. A part of me shattered. Have I really been that selfish? I asked aloud, but more to myself than anyone else. Had I been so wrapped up in my own world that I missed how they were feeling? Did they really see me this way? As a burden? A problem? I tried again. But we're family. Families help each other. They support each other, right? Madison looked at me like I was being naive. "Real families do," she said. "But real families also set boundaries. And lately, we've just needed space from you." The cruelty of it hit me all over again. In their minds, I wasn't part of the real family. Because I'd been vulnerable. Because I'd needed help. Because I had dared to take up space. And then the final, most painful truth hit me. They had made that decision together. They had talked about me. Behind my back. Held secret conversations, meetings even, where they discussed my shortcomings and decided I wasn't worth including. I wasn't worth a room. Mom finally spoke, so softly I could barely hear her over the restaurant's background noise. "We thought maybe time apart would help you reflect." Her words didn't sound like love. They sounded like a diagnosis, like a therapist prescribing space as punishment. A cold, calculated exile disguised as care. I felt sick. "You all decided this without me?" I asked, my voice raw. "You didn't think I deserved a conversation? A warning? A chance to understand? What would have been the point?" Madison shrugged, already dismissing me. "You would have just made it about your feelings. Like always." And just like that, I realized they had already made up their minds about me. Nothing I said would change it. To them, I wasn't a sister or a daughter. I was a problem to be managed. I glanced around the restaurant. Waitstaff hovered awkwardly. Guests whispered. Everyone was watching. This moment, this very public, very personal destruction, was happening in full view. And something inside me snapped. Not in anger. In clarity. The tears that had been waiting behind my eyes stopped. A sudden calm washed over me, as if I had just woken up from a long, disorienting dream. I looked at each of them, my parents, my sister, and realized they weren't who I thought they were. They weren't the safe place I had spent my whole life believing in. They were people capable of stunning cruelty. People who could plan humiliation and carry it out like it was nothing. And so, for the first time since the confrontation began, I spoke, not as someone begging to be accepted, but as someone finally choosing to walk away. "You're right," I said softly. And they froze. You're right, I said again. This time louder, steadier. They were expecting tears. More begging. A last-ditch plea to be let back in. But I wasn't there to beg anymore. I have been selfish, I continued, meeting their eyes one by one. I was selfish enough to think that family meant showing up for each other during wins and losses. I was selfish enough to believe that my struggles mattered to you, that my accomplishments would make you proud. I let the silence sit. Madison's smug expression flickered. She wasn't expecting this version of me. I was selfish enough to think we could talk like adults if there were problems. That honesty and compassion were two-way streets. I didn't realize that instead of talking to me, you were planning how to erase me. The tension at the table shifted. It wasn't mine anymore. And the other tables, those strangers who'd witnessed my humiliation, were now watching something else, a woman reclaiming her dignity. But let me tell you what I'm not selfish enough to do, I said, my voice rising ever so slightly. I'm not selfish enough to beg people to pretend they love me. I'm not selfish enough to keep chasing crumbs of attention. And I'm definitely not selfish enough to ruin what's left of my vacation with people who don't care if I'm even here. You could hear a pin drop. The power dynamic had flipped completely. I wasn't the desperate daughter anymore. I was someone walking away from people who had lost the privilege of being called family. Their faces, once so sure, so cold, were now stunned. They didn't know what to say. And I wasn't going to wait around for them to figure it out. I turned away, calm and collected, and walked toward the restaurant exit. Behind me, I heard Madison call my name, less confident now, almost unsure. For the first time, she sounded like she was the one being left behind. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked through the hotel, my head held high. People whispered, but not out of pity this time. This wasn't a walk of shame. It was a walk of freedom. When I reached the concierge desk, a woman named Elena greeted me with the kind of composed kindness that only someone who's seen everything can offer. Good evening, I said, steady as ever. I'm going to need a room for tonight. Somewhere quiet, peaceful, and far away from all this. She gave me a knowing smile. I think I have just the place. Elena typed quickly, her fingers dancing across the keyboard like she was unlocking a secret. The Lighthouse Inn had a last-minute cancellation in their premium oceanfront suite. Boutique style, intimate, quiet, very exclusive. I think you'll love it. I nodded. Please book it. While she finalized the reservation, I pulled out my phone. There was someone I needed to call, someone who would be happy to hear from me. My college roommate, Diana. She worked in luxury travel now and had connections all over the island. Diana, I said as soon as she picked up, you won't believe what just happened. But I need your help planning the best solo vacation of my life. Without hesitation, she jumped into action. Spa appointments, vineyard tours, dinner reservations. She lined up experiences that my family couldn't even dream of accessing. By tomorrow night, she told me, you'll be sipping wine on a private terrace while they're eating lukewarm hotel buffet food. I laughed for the first time that day. Not out of spite. Out of sheer relief. Something inside me had shifted. What started as betrayal was becoming freedom. By the time Elena handed me the reservation packet, I had messages pouring into my phone. Apparently, word about the restaurant scene had already made it to social media. But instead of mockery or gossip, the comments were full of support. Strangers, people who had seen everything, were praising how I handled it. Grace under pressure. Strength in the face of cruelty. Dignity when surrounded by people who had none. One woman named Sarah even posted that she wanted to buy me a drink just to toast to my self-respect. The online community I'd stumbled into in real time was offering the comfort my own family couldn't. Your driver will be here in 20 minutes, Elena said. Then she paused. And Miss Walker, what you did tonight took real courage. Your family doesn't know what they've lost. And in that moment, I believed her. As I waited for the car, I opened my notes app and started writing. Not out of spite, not even out of sadness, but because I knew this story had power. It wasn't just mine. It belonged to anyone who had ever been rejected by the very people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. I started documenting everything. From the first signs that something felt off in the group chat, to the cold reception, to the clarity I'd found in the middle of that poolside humiliation. My marketing instincts told me that this story would resonate because it was real. Raw. Honest. Painful. But also liberating. The messages kept coming. Friends, coworkers, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them saying, "I see you. I went through something similar. Thank you for putting it into words." When the car pulled up, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, I didn't feel like someone escaping. I felt like someone arriving. The lighthouse Inn was every bit as breathtaking as Elena had promised. Understated elegance. Soft candlelight. A sense of calm in every hallway. My suite faced the ocean directly, and when I opened the balcony doors, a breeze rolled and that smelled like salt water and serenity. For the first time in days, I exhaled. Long, deep. Free. I unpacked slowly, setting out my carefully chosen outfits. This trip might have started with heartbreak, but I was going to finish it in complete control. The next morning, Diana's itinerary kicked into gear. Private wine tasting at a vineyard so exclusive, it wasn't even on Google Maps. Sailing lessons from an ex-Olympian who treated me like a queen on the water. A massage with ocean views that melted every last trace of tension from my body. By the third day, I'd stopped thinking about my family altogether. I was too busy rediscovering myself. My confidence. My voice. My joy. That Thursday night, I got dressed in an emerald green dress I'd almost left at home. It fit perfectly. Hugged the right places. Made me feel powerful, radiant, alive. Dinner was at Aqua, Martha's Vineyard's most elite restaurant. Reservation only. Months in advance. But Diana had pulled strings, and I had the best table on the terrace, overlooking the sunset. Halfway through my scallop risotto, a man at the next table smiled and raised his glass. He introduced himself as Robert Chin, owner of several boutique hotels across New England. We started talking about wine, travel, hospitality, marketing. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and when I shared some of my ideas for improving guest experiences, his eyes lit up. "You're good," he said, genuinely impressed. "You ever consider moving into the hotel industry? I think you'd be brilliant." Before I could answer, I noticed movement near the restaurant entrance. I looked up and froze. It was them, my family, clearly trying to get in without a reservation. Madison was waving her hands. Catherine was talking to the hostess. James looked like he wished he were anywhere else. The hostess shook her head politely, but firmly. They weren't getting in. The irony made me smile. While they had tried to erase me from their perfect family portrait, I had become part of a whole new world, one they couldn't access. I turned to Robert and smiled. "Excuse me for a moment." I stood, walked toward the front of the restaurant, and greeted the hostess. "Is there a problem here?" The hostess lit up. "Miss Walker." They were hoping to be seated, but we're at capacity. My eyes shifted to Madison, whose face drained of color the second she realized it was me standing there. Not crushed. Not broken. Radiant. Confident. Unaffected. "I'm sorry," I said, tilting my head just slightly. "But I don't know these people." Gasps. From them. From nearby tables. The line was subtle, but sharp. They'd humiliated me in front of strangers. Now they were the ones standing on the outside, looking in. "I do recognize them, actually," I added. "They're the ones who told me I didn't belong with them. That I wasn't part of the real family." Madison stepped forward. "Emily, can we please just talk?" I cut her off, calm and composed. "Talk about what?" "How you plan to exclude me. How you watched me stand alone in that hotel lobby, humiliated, and said nothing." James started to protest, but I held up a hand. "No. You don't get to rewrite the story now." The hostess looked uncomfortable, waiting for my cue. I turned to her and said gently, "They won't be dining here tonight." And with that, I walked back to my table. Robert was smiling when I returned. "That was impressive," he said. "I think I just witnessed the most graceful mic drop I've ever seen." I laughed, genuinely this time. "I've learned the most powerful thing you can do is not accept treatment that's beneath your worth. We toasted. To boundaries. To clarity. To freedom. And to the version of me who had finally arrived. That night, walking back to the lighthouse Inn under a canopy of stars, I felt like I was floating. Not because of the wine or the food, but because I had let go of shame, of people who didn't choose me, of the version of myself that begged to belong. In just a few days, I had turned what could have been the most painful trip of my life into a declaration of independence. And it was only the beginning. 6 months later, I sat in my new corner office, overlooking Boston Harbor. I was preparing to give a presentation that would introduce innovative customer experience strategies to Robert's Hotel Group. Yes, that Robert. The man who watched me draw a line in the sand and believed in my brilliance. The career I thought had already peaked was now soaring in ways I couldn't have imagined. But the success wasn't just professional. The healing, the real transformation, happened inside. After returning from the island, I started therapy with Dr. Amanda Foster, a specialist in family trauma. She helped me connect I hadn't even known were there. The patterns of conditional love. The passive criticism disguised as concern. The emotional tightrope I'd walked my entire life trying to earn love that should have been given freely. It didn't start at the resort, Dr. Foster said during one of our sessions. That was just the breaking point. The truth is, you've been trying to meet invisible expectations your whole life. And she was right. My family's rejection didn't come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of years of subtle favoritism, emotional withdrawal, and a quiet resentment that had been simmering long before that vacation. Coming to terms with that was hard, but freeing, because it allowed me to stop chasing a version of love that was never real to begin with. Instead, I started building a chosen family. Diana became more than a college friend. She became my anchor. She showed up. She listened. She celebrated me without reservation. Robert, too, became more than a mentor. Our shared respect turned into genuine friendship. I also reconnected with old friends, people who remembered the real me before I was taught to second-guess my excitement, my ambition, my light. One of them was Sarah Murphy. She flew in from San Francisco for a weekend girls' trip, and over dinner, she said something that stayed with me. Emily, you've always been the most generous person in the room. You lifted other people up without dimming your own light. That family? They didn't deserve you. And they were too blind to know it. And just like that, a wound I didn't know was still there started to heal. The truth is, I hadn't changed who I was. I had just stopped trying to prove my worth to people who never intended to see it. In my new role, I thrived. My team respected me for how I led, with empathy, not ego. My campaigns didn't just exceed expectations, they redefined them. Meanwhile, my biological family kept trying to re-enter my life. But every message felt like a manipulation. Madison sent text after text, sometimes apologizing, sometimes defending herself, sometimes pretending none of it had happened. James would call once a month, usually after Catherine prompted him. But the conversations were hollow, like reading a script with no emotion behind it. Catherine sent cards. Long, handwritten letters filled with nostalgia and I love yous, but always stopping short of accountability. They ended the same way, an invitation to come home and put all this behind us. As if betrayal could be smoothed over with birthday cards and selective memory. But I didn't hate them. I didn't retaliate. I simply held my boundaries. Polite. Clear. Unshakable. Because forgiveness isn't pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is choosing peace. And sometimes that peace means saying, I'm done. My new life had no room for pretending. Instead of painful holidays, I now celebrated my own traditions. I started taking solo trips once a year, somewhere new, somewhere beautiful, somewhere just for me. My most recent trip was to Iceland. Northern lights, glaciers, silence that wrapped around you like a blanket. It was there, beneath a sky dancing with green and violet light, that I met someone unexpected. Trevor, a wildlife photographer from New Zealand. Quiet, kind, The kind of man who asked questions, listened to the answers, and never once made me feel like I had to shrink to make space for him. We bonded over stories of travel, family, independence. There was no pressure, no performance. Just two people meeting at the right time, with no need to be anyone but who they truly were. That experience reminded me of the most important truth of all. Your worth doesn't depend on anyone's ability to recognize it. You are not more valuable when others validate you. You are not less valuable when they don't. Your light is not dimmed because others wear blindfolds. As I wrapped up my final slide and looked out over the boardroom, my new team watching me with admiration, I thought back to that hotel lobby. The shattered mug. The missing reservation. The moment I thought I had lost everything. But now I know. That moment didn't break me. It birthed me. So now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who made you feel small, even when those people were your own family? How did you find the strength to choose your own peace over their approval? Share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it. And if mine resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own worth, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life stories of courage, boundaries, and self-respect. Because sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept love that comes with conditions that ask you to disappear. Thank you for listening. This is Emily. And this time I chose me.